Sounds like it smells good. It does smell good.
Sounds like it smells good. Yes.
It's pumpkin spice season, dude.
Pumpkin spice. Hey, have you got any light for your front of your face? You're kind of shadowed a little bit. I don't know if you got
my
any...
dark.
It's
I
not
can
terrible.
another.
But if you got like, there you go. That's good. I like.
Heyo. Hold on. Let me turn on the other thing real quick.
Side. There we go. Side by side view. Okay. Now we're rocking. Close.
Need to get one of those like rings, you know, that the e-girls have, right? Those light rings.
Yeah, the people at work have those. The lawyers all like those. Yeah, they have. They actually have a camera that connects to your monitor. It's on like a little swivel snake that you can put direct, and that has a little light on it. And it's like the super bougie web presenter camera. Yeah. So yeah, you can bring it like right to your face and be like, I'm centered.
Need one of those when I start my OnlyFans. Light up my butthole.
What do you mean when? You know you already have one. You've had one for years.
I thought about it.
Everyone has. It's all the rage. Oh man. Yeah, that could be a whole podcast. What the fuck is happening to sexuality and human culture thanks to the goddamn internet and things like OnlyFans and camming and cam girls and what have you. Everyone's a porn star now. Man. Everyone became the porn. Like first it was like you went and had to find a magazine in the back of your dad's fucking closet, dig it out.
No, I know. We worked for ours.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Or like convince somebody to like go buy you some porn or some shit. Now it's just like, I am the porn. I just fucking dildo myself on a camera all day. People give me money.
At your fingertips, like you could just, I don't know, some acquaintance you meet at a party and like go home, pay $10 and boom, you're looking at her butthole.
Right, and dude, that's what's crazy is some of those, you know, I mean, everyone's taking a gander, but some of the women on there, I'm like, wow, I would never expect, like if I saw this woman on the street, you know, I would never expect her to be on a website shoving a dildo in her hooch for the world to see. You know what I mean?
Well, they make a lot of money.
Right. But I'm just saying.
They make a ton of money.
That used to be like its own business, not just your average person at home with a webcam. You know what I mean? People used to have to go to like Hollywood to be in porn. You know? Now
it's like, I
come
business.
home and I'm horny and I want money
business?
And I just spread my legs. Duh.
Just fucking
my money
mashing a
my
dildo.
Money maker.
Yeah,
strange.
I wonder what the dudes make though. You know, I'm sure you're just jerking it to like all dude. I don't think there's chicks.
No, it's other dudes for sure.
It's for dudes, right?
Yeah. Chicks don't need to go online and watch dudes jack off.
You know, like how much are they making? What are we talking here?
Probably not much.
You know?
I think guys do it probably just for sport. You know what I mean? It's more of a kink at that point. I doubt men are making like a living off that. Maybe there's like the few Fabios out there that are getting hit up, but who knows, man?
Yeah.
Strange times.
God, what would my line be? Like if I made... it'd be really embarrassing if people found out. But like, if I made an extra like $5 a month,
just anything. Fuck,
I'd probably do it.
$5,
you know,
whatever. And
just
you get the
gate myself
thrill of showing your wang to the world, right? That's the new thrill, man.
You gotta do more than that. You gotta put in a little effort. You gotta take a.
You can't just let it just stand there. Just stand there with a flaccid.
No, that's too easy.
Here it is.
There's competition now because it's the whole market.
That's true.
It's the whole market, dude. People are gonna be like, dude, you're not, you know, like us. We're not good looking enough, you know.
Hey, speak for yourself.
You'd have to ride one of those machines, dude.
The fuck machines? Those are the weirdest, dude. Those are the weirdest. Like, what? It's just like that's just like seems a little too.
Just hook up an orbital saw to dildo.
Get your webcam on it. You'll make money while you're at it. It's funny because actions that used to be shameful, you know, like you would do that, like hiding in your garage and don't want anyone to know. Now it's something you just throw on a webcam and make money for. You know, it's weird how that changed. Like all these taboo acts used to be like, no, I'm not doing that. You know, like I said, some of these women I see on there, like I would think years past they would never. Even the fact of showing your boobs to the world would be taboo, you know, and you think about what that was in like the 60s, 70s, whatever, beyond. Could they imagine now just like, every like girl next door with a webcam is just riding the fuck machine to fucking, I don't know, livelihood. Strange times, long story short, dude.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. I
don't judge them.
Right. I think it's my whole point to
some aspects of it are good.
Yeah, well, my whole reason for bringing that up was not so much judging it morally, right or wrong, but just like literally the effect it's having evolutionary on society. I mean, it's like adding, the printing press or the, the plow or any of these things that like change. And sexuality obviously is like a huge part of human dynamics. I mean, it's the bar none, thing that pretty much every human, made. Yeah, and humans all care about it. Every person on this planet in some way, shape, or form has a relationship to sexuality. So now that it's blown up into this thing, which I think it's kind of at an interesting point to where it's at that point in society where a lot of people are doing it and consuming it and participating in it, but not a lot of people are talking about it like openly and like, in like kind of a philosophical point of view of like, what are kind of ramifications
what
of
are the
this?
effects of this?
Yeah. You kind of like with social
we don't
media.
know.
Same thing
That's
with social media. Yeah, like how is it
with anything like that? You don't know what the effects are going to be for some time. Yeah. We can postulate, but like,
I mean,
I don't know, man.
Even being
are
like,
young men gonna be warped? Probably.
That's why I feel, man. You get so much self-serve.
I quit.
Like,
cold turkey.
Good. Yeah. It's tough.
And I've noticed good benefits from it.
I believe. Yeah.
But looking online when I was quitting, I was like, what are the benefits? The whatever, and like, there's an adamant group of people that it's not addictive, there's no negative effects.
Yeah, it's just entertainment.
Like,
it's like going to the movies.
No negative effects? Like, I don't know about that. What is this brought to you by Brazzers,
Here's what I've narrowed it down to.
Like, there's got to be some negative effects.
You know what I think it is? I've nailed it down to one word. Porn in its essence is a complete and utter distraction. For real, for what you should be putting that energy towards, like say your partner or other things. Right. I mean, it's kind of an energy drain, and it distracts you from where you could. And that's what's always frustrated me about it. Is like after fucking looking at porn for an hour, I was like, man, I could have wrote a song or done some cool shit, or you know what I mean. There was always that kind of guilt of like I could have spent my time a little better. It was not so much I felt bad about the act of it. It was more of like just a waste of time. Same kind of feeling I get playing video games, honestly, and no judgment there. But I'm just saying, it just feels like a very time-burning activity that isn't really giving anything back. It's kind of like fast food.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's like fast food. Yeah, it kind of gets rid of your hunger temporarily, but there's no nutrients. You know what I mean? There's no nutrients.
You're not gaining any knowledge.
Yeah,
you're not
and it's all fake. When there's
muscle. I mean, I guess you are, but like,
Well, and it's fake connection to humans too. Yeah,
it's not productive.
Yeah, and when it's off, it's off. It's like you're having this moment because you think about like sexuality is a very deep thing to share with somebody, and just be like giving that up to a stranger who has no idea they're even participating in that moment, and then they're just gone, and you get like again you've drained this energy to basically just nothing, a ghost, versus sharing that in a reciprocal way with somebody in a healthy way.
Yes.
That's my point. It's like sexuality can be like a reciprocal, net gain for both parties, or it can be this kind of thing where you're disbulging something and getting nothing back, much like fast food.
So I do agree. I agree, that there might be some sort of esoteric energy transfer kind of thing going on. But the hard, fact of it is that, like, your brain is wired a certain way, your caveman brain. You're getting that feedback of like, oh, all these women want to sleep with me because like your brain just sees tits and it thinks that it's
what I'm saying.
For you.
Yeah.
When we didn't have it, you had to work for it, Yeah. You had to like develop a personality, get in shape, and whatever. But now it's like
exactly, and
you can satisfy that just by clicking buttons and take that shortcut,
Well, that's what I meant.
Not good.
I didn't even mean energy in like a woo-woo way. I meant like literal, like gas in your physical, like again.
I think there's a
like the way
thing to it.
Yeah, well, and like the way that like again, bad food drains your energy. It literally like brings you to the point where you don't or like lack of sleep. I kind of liken it to that. Like when you blow a load, dude, that's a lot of like gas going out of you. That again, I feel like that. What do they call your chi or your kundalini energy? A lot of that's tied to sexual energy. Through like tantric concepts and things like that. So if you're
it's one of the chakras, right?
Yeah, and if you're just burning that shit away, just tossing it into a computer screen and then go back to and it's very confusing for the mind because in that moment you're tricking it like, oh, this is a real experience, and then it's like, wait, no reciprocity. That person I just gave that to is off and wherever. And right, right. And again, I do think there are ramifications of that because I think it makes when you do encounter it in the real world, the lines blur and it gets weird. And I've heard a lot of women complain about that, where like, you know, guys try to fuck like they're in porn or something like that, because it tries to make you then put that into all of your sexuality.
Yeah, you think it's normal,
right?
You know,
or you just try to recreate what you see in porn in the real world, and it's like, no, not many people are porn stars, you know.
Yeah, like
most,
what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, most people want to just share kind of their emotional bond through sex. They don't necessarily want some glamour banging on the washing machine because it looks cool type stuff. But you know, and you look at a lot of that.
Hey babe, can you go get stuck in the washing machine?
Yeah, and again, nothing wrong with any of that. I don't know. It's just
what a weird
weird
genre.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a big subject for sure, and affects literally everybody. I think that's why it's interesting. So I think on a mass scale now, I think really what I want to talk about that is like you have more people now than ever before exchanging like sexual energy on the planet, right? And that's what I mean if you like zoom out and look at it from like a big evolutionary scale. Before humans to like, you know, bump uglies, they had to like roll into your town on the wagon or meet you at the hootenanny or whatever, right? And now to like exchange an orgasm, it's literally, I think how many are happening like right now as we're speaking. Think how many people are like getting off online in this world. It's like, I'm just saying the numbers like stepped up, you know, it's like anything else. It's like
so many.
Yeah. And you think about like, you know, compared to like data acquisition on the planet, like the amount of data now we're accumulating, it is another insane thing. So I just kind of look at all these like basic human factors and seeing how they're all stacking. And, you know, sexuality is, I think, the one that's least considered because nobody likes to talk about it. You know what I mean? And when they talk about like facts and figures and statistics about, you know, the planet evolving, like that's usually one that's left out. Is like there's a lot of people who weren't able to, you know, exchange sexual discourse are now all doing that. And what does that mean? You know, how is it, like I said, how is that going to affect us going down the road? We shall see.
I don't know. We have no idea.
Maybe this will just become one Roman orgy fuckfest on this planet.
You're seeing the rise of the incels, though, of these weird dudes that like hate women, you know. And I think that a lot of that's probably from the porn, and they just don't have real life interactions with women, so they create this idea in their head that doesn't really match reality, you know?
Yeah,
they just spiral, and then they're angry, and so women don't like them, you know? And then they are angry at the world because they're not getting any pussy.
Dude, my cousin James, I don't know if you met him, but he's, you know, techie. He's one of those generational kids who played, you know, 8, 10, 12 hours a day of computer video games, whatever. And he still pretty much lives on his computer. Anyway, he was telling me recently that, you know, he's on Reddit a lot. That's where this came from. He was on Reddit and he was saying there's this whole community of people, what do they call them? Oh, involuntary celibates. And there are these people like
incel.
Incel. Yeah, you just said that. Yeah, and they're like, they're angry that like they feel they should have pussy, but so anyway, they're reaching out to like their companies to solve the problem. Like there's actually in tech work now, tech workers are going to the companies saying you need to like, you know, issue us, you know, girlfriends basically. Like when we move here from other countries to work here, they want that to be part of their contract. Like they get a wife. This isn't a joke. Like there's actually people like pushing for that. These, you know, involuntary celibates. They're like, well, you know, you moved me out here. I don't know anyone. I don't have any options, but I can't stand being celibate. So yeah, my company should solve this for me. It's a real topic of debate.
That is weird.
I know, right? Like I said, speaking of
pussy communism. Jeez.
Equal pussy for all, everyone. Equal distributed. Even if you don't want it, you got it. It's showing up at your doorstep, 10 o'clock every night. Be ready.
Yeah. Take over the means of pussy distribution.
Oh my God. That's the world we're in, man.
That's wild, man.
It really is. So, but, so I was going to introduce you. Sorry for the hard change of topic, but I want to introduce my special guest behind me. That is Tobacco. Yeah.
Cool, dude.
We had our plant conversation last time. That's another segue. I'm going to play a little clip of where we left off in the last podcast, because in the spirit of the Yim Yam, we're just kind of continuing the conversation always, right? And so we were talking about plant intelligence, and I was telling Jordan how tobacco kind of summoned me to it, and now I roll it in my spleefs, but I just wanted to say, there it is. In case y'all, no one's ever seen tobacco.
Did you name it?
Nah, this one. I got like 15 of these plants. You should see the ones in my backyard. The leaves are like elephant ears. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really cool plant. So
yeah, it's looking good, man.
Yeah.
It's like it's thriving.
So I'm going to share this little tidbit here. Oh, let's see. How am I going to do this? So I got to go share share screen. Share sound. Okay. All right, here you go. And then Jordan's actually seeing this for the first time. He hasn't seen my little edit of this. So I made it look fancy. All right, so here's where we left off in the last Yim Yam. Because, I think, it's like ideas come in your head. If you're sitting alone in a forest by a river feeling a Zen moment and you're getting this, like, kind of sensation of, like, that too is like, is that what is communicating? Is that your own brain? Is that the clouds? Is that the river? Is that your just relationship to reality? When you're not being affected by anything, but you're getting novel thoughts. Like Terrence McKenna.
I think we gotta can this conversation for the next pod. We're branching out into a whole new.
I don't know. I mean, we're only
where did thoughts come from? Like
no. I was just saying if a novel thought, I'm saying is it due to the relationship you're having with the scenery that you're in, and that's again it's going. So there's that little bit. Yep. From last time where we were talking about plant intelligence, and I think I try to describe where thoughts come from. Inadvertently. Yeah.
Where do they come from? What is consciousness?
What is conscious? And I figure since we're new in the podcast, it doesn't hurt to, kind of get our initial, belief systems out to the world. And I think that's a good, healthy discussion to have of just the fundamentals, where we're coming from on life, right?
Yeah. Because, what's it all about?
Right. Well, I mean, and too, just like kind of that reductive reasoning, I think we all in our tender moments of silence, before we fall asleep at night, have some fleeting thoughts about, what the fuck is really going on? How did I get here? What the hell is going to sleep and having a dream and all that kind of crap, just your tie to this thing. I think we all at some point have some interest in, solving that conundrum, even though, we just got to get back to business as usual after those thoughts. But hey, every now and then, you and I, Jordan, back in the day, we would entertain such things, usually over, copious amounts of cannabis and or mushrooms or
indulgences
or booze or just good old-fashioned times when you're, 18, 19, 20 years old, branching out into the world for the first time. So, that's kind of where you and I began. So in the spirit of that, it's good to continue that into this podcast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So where do thoughts come from?
Where do they come from? Right here, Jordan.
From marijuana. That's where all the good ones come from.
And tobacco too, right? Yeah, So, that's
okay, so why? Let's say, there's that cliche of like stoner discussions, or
Exactly, but I'm trying to shift that a little bit.
But why do you think that substances like mushrooms or LSD or marijuana, why do those substances change the way you think or encourage deeper thought or more philosophical?
Well, this is exactly where I was trying to go at the end of last week. Is basically, is there really such thing as a novel thought? Like, does your brain create the thoughts, or is it all a product of your interaction with the environment? You get what I'm saying? Like,
such a good question.
That's what I mean. And so, yes, me interacting with this is creating new thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a pairing of me and it, and so I always get into this line of thinking that, we as beings experiencing a world are on an innately meaningless world, but through our direct interaction with this world, we generate this layer called meaning, thought, attachment, philosophy, whatever. That's not inherently in the landscape. The mountains are just out there, the rocks are out there, the trees, the fucking whatevers, and we come and look at it and add thoughts to it. But I guess my question is, are we bringing those thoughts purely on our own? Or is it through some dynamic relationship with the landscape, with the plants, that is literally where the thought, I'm trying to get down to like the nuts and the bolts. Like where does the signal
external?
Fire? Right. And is it more a result of like a collective, entourage effect versus just purely our brain coming up with shit? You know what I mean? I think the entourage effect with you and your landscape, your reality, coupled is what's actually making the total thought, if that makes sense.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. So that's a dualism approach to
I think your brain is one part of it. Yeah.
There's two avenues. There's monism and dualism. And so, and all that means is like monism would be there's only one thing. And that could be either, there's people that are strict materialists that think there's only matter, right? And consciousness arises from brain matter, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just a side effect of it.
Right, it's a machine.
And then you could also be, you could have a monist view in the other direction where it's like the only thing that exists is consciousness and matter arises from consciousness, which between those two, I would lean towards the more, it's called phenomenology. I would lean more towards the phenomenology of like, at the end of the day, consciousness is the only thing that exists, really, because it's the only thing you can prove, really. Like, I know that I exist, right? So maybe my consciousness is just creating this reality, and it's creating matter, right? So that's monism. And then you have dualism, which is there's more than one thing, which is what Descartes postulated. Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am." One of the earlier
classic
philosophers. He had a dualist approach. So he was saying there's spirit, there's consciousness, but there's also matter, and it's that interaction that we perceive in this reality, which that's more towards what I lean to.
Right.
I think that there's a dualism to our reality.
And then I think the next question is, what does that dualism create? I think that's kind of where you get into like, what's the third result of those two forces? It's like when you combine two anythings, you get the alchemated third result. And so, I don't think reality would be exactly the way it was if it wasn't, I like the term hyper-literal. It's literally coming through the interaction of beings with consciousness, interacting with a placid, consciousness-less, if that's a word, environment. And then through that dynamic, you get these results. And I think the results is that like third thing that's hard to like put, I think, the result is a thought. The result is an action. The result is a feeling,
emotion,
right,
behavior,
right, exactly. But it's like we all feel this element of free will, like I can sit and make a choice and go left or right or do anything I want. But my mind goes into behind every action there's literally like an infinite amount of details that led up to the moment of that choice, behind you, that you're often not considering all that. It's just kind of washing in to the moment of making that decision. But I think the reality is every decision you make is stacked on literally every single other decision you've ever made, period. Right?
Yeah, the butterfly effect.
Yeah, but in the moment you're like, oh, this is just based on me being hungry now or me being angry at that shithead or whatever. But it's really like a confluence of details that is so fucking dense and detail rich that your mind filters all that out to just pretend, oh, it's just, these couple simple little factors, But I think that's what the mind's good at. The mind's, I think, good at reducing the elements so that you can pretend that there's just a little bit going on. There's just this room. There's just me and you talking, right? But I think
actually have a note about that. So our brains process 40 billion bits of information, right? Constantly. 40 billion bits of information. We are only conscious of about 400.
I thought it was less than that. Yeah. I thought it was more like 20, like directly conscious, like, like your skin temperature.
That's what I'm saying.
Hunger.
Yeah, you're conscious of, what did I say, 400 or 40?
400, which seems like a lot.
So your brain is going through, okay, maybe it's 40.
It's probably 40.
Regardless, it's a huge ratio of like,
right, but your brain's crunching it down.
Your brain is processing, and you're only conscious of a tiny fraction that you're focusing on,
And the big question there is what mechanism is making that filtering choice? That's another part. Is that like a program?
That's the big question.
Yeah, right. Is that a program that's deep in the genealogy of the planet? That like just by being here interacting with it, the program's going to run a certain way. Is that individuality? Is there free will involved in that? There's a lot of factors.
Yeah, free will is an interesting conversation. But in terms of, all right, so you're saying like what decides to focus on the where the 40 bits, which 40 bits.
Exactly. Well, like,
you know?
exactly. And what set up the parameters of like what to dump and what to keep, and you know what I mean? And something, because you think about like any computer program that's doing such a filtering
evolution.
thing. Right. Well, I'm just saying, think about like data mining right now, and like a big market is basically people who can filter and make sense of mass data. You know, and they're coming up with all these algorithms to comb through giant amounts of junk data to, pull out the couple little gems of usable things to sell back to people or what the fuck ever. But your brain is doing the same shit. Yeah, and it's going through all this. But the point is that algorithm had to be programmed somewhere at some point, unless it's just in the fabric of the cosmos, you know what I mean? But then again, you're getting into where to, who programmed the original fucking
Okay, so let me put my materialist hat on.
Yeah.
I would answer saying that evolution did this, and it's all just natural selection.
But what got the ball rolling? Something had to get that ball rolling, though. It didn't just roll out of nothing.
That's such an interesting question, because when I was doing research for this, I went down a little rabbit hole about like the origins of life.
That's like that's not a little rabbit hole.
What do the scientists currently think?
Yeah.
Well,
are they all just saying buy crypto?
They
forget about it. Buy crypto. we'll tell you all the answers if you have enough Ethereum.
At the bottom hole. Yeah, at the bottom of the rabbit hole, Matt Damon's there waiting to sell you crypto.
I'll give you all the answers for 5 Ethereum tokens. Sweet.
Yeah. God.
Anyway, sorry.
It's a good time to buy right now.
You're right. It's slumping. Everybody, get in there.
It's on sale.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But no, so they think that it started in undersea volcanic vents, right? That's where the conditions occurred, where you had this like movement of movement of you had heat, you had energy, transfers of energy, whatever, and you had fatty acids or polymers or whatever, the soup for which life would start, right? So they make all these theories, but what I found out, they still haven't recreated it in a lab. So they think they know, like, here, you need this, and you need to create... there's kind of two theories of, like, RNA came first, So you'd have that data. And then, but there's some other leading biologists who think the Krebs came first, i.e. like a metabolism, But they're so confident that it was just a natural thing that happened, and it's like, but you can't yet, like all your billions of dollars in labs, and you can't make it happen. That's kind of telling, I think.
I agree, and it's telling that throughout all of human history, there's been people who've claimed they know, and there's something that I guess I see the catch-22 in that is that I think when people write their own story like that, it becomes true. It's like what we're saying, consciousness does manifest materiality. And when a group of people, especially a group of people, there's that critical mass. When enough people believe something, it becomes cold, hard fact.
Oh, yeah.
But, it starts... algorithm. Well, right. But it starts in the mind of somebody somewhere. You know what I mean? All of these, like... eras of humankind are all orchestrated by people who believe something at the time. If you think about that, the Romans really believed what the fuck they were doing. The Italians at the time or whatever, all the different dynasties, you name it, people really believe it at the time. But I guess I always get into that notion of, when people are really that sure, like you just said, these people are sure, right? And think about that, what that notion is when a person or a mind is sure about something, right? And I think it's more about...
It's the most dangerous thing ever.
Well, I think it's, again, back to that hyper-literal thing. I think the feeling of being sure is the indication that manifesting is about to happen or is happening. You get what I'm saying? And that's where the assurance feels in that person who's like, yeah, my worldview is... And look, I can see, And so, I mean, I've even, try this on. This is a little out there, but I think, even like in the invention of, say, like the Hubble telescope and what they're seeing in space and why that shit worked. Frankly, dude, if it is a holographic universe, I think that shit literally works, and the images they're seeing are just basically what their imagination is showing back to them. Because when you really think about it, why would a metal object
Ooh.
full of mirrors and things and
Cool.
all of this deliver all? I mean, and every time they think they've upgraded it. I mean, the story of Hubble's fascinating. The main engineer that solved the issue of how to get the lens to work literally had an epiphany in the shower because of his moving shower head. This is a real story, and they couldn't fix
all
the
of
telescope.
those, like,
But the point is like that thought came in and then it became reality and it made this telescope that gave us images of the universe. And so my point is that series of events was more about giving the confidence of people that it would work. And as soon as people were confident this thing's worked, guess what it did? So that's what I'm saying. Is it the fact that they were so confident that it finally worked and this little epiphany solved it and then it did? Because before, and that collective anxiety where it didn't work was keeping it from working. And so I think, again, there's some hyper-literal attachment to people's relationship to these outcomes. I mean, people think it's totally separate, but I think their feelings about it literally make it go one way or another.
That's the reality.
Yeah, and when everyone at NASA was stoked and go, oh, yeah, we solved it, we fixed the problem, this is the thing, and boom, images just came pouring in once everyone believed they would.
And it's interesting that you say that about how he got that thought in the shower, because that seems to be a pretty common thing.
It
like
is.
Tesla, he said that a lot of his ideas just kind of came to him. He said it felt like he was receiving downloads from. That's
what I'm saying.
He thought he was talking to Martians.
Well, and here's the thing: is all things we experience in this world, invention or otherwise, began with a single person having the epiphany, and then it snowballs out into access for everybody else. But all it takes is one of us to have the epiphany to unlock it for. Like my joke, I came with this joke about bell bottoms of like, you know, who was the first stoned out hippie in the middle of the night to have the download from the Martians of like. I should sew this patch into my pants and make them wider. Like, my legs will be sweaty no more. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. And then I was thinking, I was like, okay, did it hit one hippie and he spread it? Or was there, like, some program that got initiated and all of a sudden that one night, people across the globe are like, what the fuck are we doing with these tight, restrictive pants? Like, let's widen these bottoms up, baby. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did that
thought come from? It could have just been Levi's. You know, they goofed up and were like, made these wacky looking pants. And they're like, no, it's cool now. Let's just sell them.
Right. Totally. But the point is, whether it was like a series of events that led to somebody to have the epiphany or somebody just sitting around smoking weed to have the epiphany, it took but a single mind. It's kind of my point. And then for it to extrapolate and become a phenomenon like the bell bottom, you know, then suddenly everyone's got fucking bell bottoms. But you can almost trace that back to someone's single epiphany somewhere. I mean, you can if you knew, but there's too much detail now to ever sort that out. I mean, you know, it's so far back. How are you ever going to find the first motherfucker who thought about the bell bottom? You know, even in like skateboarding, mini skaters have claimed to do the first ollie, and it's still like a debate in skating. Oh, you know, who did the first ollie? Oh, was it Rodney Mullen? Was it Christian Hosoi? Oh,
it wasn't Tony Hawk.
No, fuck no, it wasn't Tony Hawk. But most people think it was give it to Rodney Mullen, frankly. But again, there's one of those things. How can you say on planet Earth we know the first person? I bet the first person who actually did one was probably in some rural parking lot in the middle of nowhere. No one for miles saw it, and this dude figured out how to ollie his board and was like, oh shit.
But then once one person figures it out, it spreads like wildfire.
And that's why I love skating, because you really see that. As soon as there's like a new paradigm of like trick, all of a sudden it ripples out. Like, you know, in the mid 90s, like a cover of a magazine was somebody doing like a board slide down a handrail. Now these fuckers are like, if you're not like flip tricking in, crook grinding, trick, I mean, it's like insane the level of it. But it's like that's the new normal, is like what back then in the 90s was like inconceivable in skateboarding. Now these kids are just pulling it out of their fucking asses like it ain't shit. And it's like,
every step, you know, it propagates, and then the next step is achieved. But have you ever heard of the 100th monkey effect?
Yes, that's a cool one.
Yeah, so that the 100th monkey effect postulates that like once one idea happens, then it spreads so rapidly that it's somewhat like unexplainable.
Yeah, I agree. It's like initiating, you know, a computer program or something, and just watching it go and just take, you know, like loading a virus in the machine. I mean, all it takes is that initial download, and boom.
The idea is that it propagates even to groups that are physically separated. So apparently through some sort of like collective unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Well, or more, like I said, I kind of think of, frankly, I mean, because here's where I get this. I think humans naturally recreate the environment we live in, and since, you know, what we are creating inherently is information technology, sharing information in vast distances. That's what pretty much inherently all computers are for. All of the internet is for. Cameras, recording equipment. It seems like humans constantly want to regurgitate reality in some form, share it, and send it, right? And so I think we represent like a fractal. The small parts represent the whole. So I think if we behave like that as the beings in this reality, that reality must operate in a similar fashion. I think we're just regurgitating what we are inherently inside of. Kind of like that Rick and Morty episode where he keeps going into his car battery and there's like a slave world that powers his battery, and then they go to the other world within the world.
One.
Yeah, and they all keep figuring it out like, oh, wait, we don't want to make this energy. Let's just go make another world.
We'll just make another universe.
Right. And so I think at some point societies, we get so clever with programming like we do with computers, we can literally program entire realities. And I think very much like that, I think we're just in some sort of because think about it, our world we're in has like parameters like a computer program, gravity, metabolism, oxygenating your lungs. There's like some strict parameters. And then within that, like a program, there's a lot of variance, kind of like a chessboard. It's an 8x8 grid, but within that, it's almost nearly infinite amount of outcomes. And you see that in our world. It's constrained to a degree, but then once you let the program run, i.e. inject people and life into it, you come up with cajillions of outcomes in a relatively constrained program. You know what I mean?
So do you think that we're living in a simulation?
I wouldn't, I think the word for it is tricky. I think what we're in operates like one. I wouldn't say necessarily it is one, but I think the way the world works is very similar to the way virtual reality and computers and machines work.
Specify a technological simulation, I guess, because the word simulation, like, what does that mean?
I'll put it this way. Here's what I've always thought very interesting. Why a lot of ancient traditions have always referenced it as the creator. Think about that word. Creator. A creator is a very loose term, and think computer programmers are creating every day. Artists are creating every day, and so I'm saying when we reference the world as it is being made by a creator, that could be a very simple person or thing or object or what the fuck ever.
Just some nerd in his mom's basement running a computer program.
And I will say this is a good time to interject a very brief moment of my ayahuasca experience that was basically that, and it was very surreal because it was quick. It was very quick, and I remember it was that moment like you experienced at Tom Petty where you're just zooming out, and you just keep going out. And I remember just thinking like, how much further out am I gonna get? And
How far out can you go?
I popped out into a plain cubicle, and it was very serene and silent. And there was a dude in an old suit, with a little thin black tie, sitting with kind of his side to me, typing on an old Apple computer. And then what I had popped out of, and I turned around and I looked at what I popped out of, and there was another one sitting on his desk, and there was a little like kind of ghetto looking world just spinning, just like like a little virtual world.
Whoa.
And ayahuasca just said,
on the computer?
Yeah, on the one that was sitting next to him. And he was typing on another one, and then he had one. It was like a little L-shaped desk, and
he wasn't even focusing on the simulation.
No, he was doing what he was doing. Right? No, it was just exactly. It was sitting next to him, and it was just sitting there, and this world's turning. And anyway, I popped down. I remember I turned around and I could see his cubicle in all directions. And ayahuasca just said to me as I saw the screen, it goes, "Oh yeah, your entire world's in there." And then I just went zooming back in. It was. Like,
did he notice you?
No.
Did he see you?
It was one of those things like Ghost of Christmas Past. I like came out and observed it, and I didn't affect him at all. And then ayahuasca's like, "Oh yeah, see that screen with that little world spinning? You're inside of that." And I just like went back in, and it was like.
So was it like pretty high tech, or did it look like?
No, like I said, it was those old Apple computers that you put in the big disc, just sitting there. It was like a pixelated little globe, just like. And it looked like I said, it was very serene and placid, and the dude didn't seem. Anything interesting? Just a guy in a cubicle running basically a Sim City,
Just Norbert, doing that on his side computer. His boss probably yells at him. He's like, "Oh, you're doing that simulation again."
Well, one of the so
he's like, "They're real, I swear."
to put the materialist hat spin on this, the one theory that I like that kind of, in my mind, is a good reductionist way to explain this is the Big Bang. And so the Big Bang is one of those things where we say. We go back to this moment, right? And nothing about the universe is known before it. The universe is just a hard stop at the Big Bang. Like
Correct.
We run right.
The math ends.
And I think honestly, it was shithead Musk brought this point up years ago, and he said, what is the other thing that operates from a zero sum state? It's off to full operating state. A program.
Yeah, a program. Yeah.
You know, when you start a program like so,
that,
and I thought about this with the game The Sims. You remember The Sims where you can control a little neighborhood and stuff? And I thought about that. Like, how do you not know that when you fire that game up and that reality is existing in front of you, that those beings aren't actually experiencing it for the time that it's on? You know what I mean?
Okay, that's a really good point.
Like a Big Bang, because it springs into existence the moment you flip the ones and zeros on your computer on. There's the reality, and then when it's off, whoosh.
And they wouldn't really know when you turn it off.
Exactly.
Right?
It would just end. It would just end. And like I said, if you think about it, our knowledge ends at the Big Bang. It just runs up to this point where it's just this zero-sum state where there's just nothing.
Yeah.
We just go.
Okay, real quick. I got two things. So,
yeah,
the simulation theory. So I would answer that as odds are we are in a technological simulation.
I agree.
So
I agree.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hear it.
Right now, let's look at our virtual reality. Our graphics, if you will, CGI graphics. They're pretty good, right? You would agree?
Yeah, they've gotten a lot better in our lifetime. That's for damn sure.
In our lifetime, how quick is our lifetime? Think about like 30 years. How amazing have they gotten?
It's a cosmic, not even half a hiccup. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a blip, right?
Yeah.
And we've gotten this far, and we're you know, you got Oculus, right? My 8-year-old just really wants an Oculus for his birthday.
What is that? You're gonna have to educate me on that. To be honest, what is that?
It's a virtual reality.
In what way? Oh, okay, it's a headset.
You wear a headset and play you can play Minecraft in it.
Oh boy!
And there's dude, it's actually so.
Okay, I'm not hating. It sounds cool. Yeah.
I tried one and I thought it was gonna suck, and it definitely does not suck. It's pretty rad.
Dude, I remember trying
it's way better than I thought it was going to be.
Did you ever go to the Science Center back in the day and try the beta 1 version of that headset where you went into the virtual world where it's literally the block? I remember Star Fox. I mean, it looked like that inside there. But you put on this helmet that was fucking huge, this big plastic motherfucker. And when you went in there, it was just this square block world. You know, it looked like Super Nintendo graphics. It was fun.
Yeah, no, the graphics have come a long way. I was surprised. I thought it was gonna suck, and I was like, dude, this is actually pretty dope.
Okay, cool. How much is that for a consumer level VR these days?
Oh, you don't want to know? I do. It's a decent amount, dude. We're budgeting for his birthday.
Jeez, this kid must be special.
He's pretty special.
Is this Magnus or the other one?
Yeah, Magnus.
Oh, okay.
Magnus. Yeah,
I was gonna say your kid who broke his leg, Ivan or whatever. I'd say, yeah, hook him up. I mean, he broke his leg. That's fucked up.
Oh, I know.
I guess he spent all his birthday money at the hospital. You can tell him his presence in his leg.
Exactly. I don't have free health care anymore like when I was in the Navy.
Oh man, yeah, healthcare's
sorry. That's your birthday. Your cast is your birthday present.
Exactly. Yeah, the fact that we fixed that, you're lucky. We could do this. Yeah, did a DIY. You know, put a twig on it and wrap some tape.
Dude, when it happened, my wife was like, we definitely have to go to the doctor, right? He's crying. He's not.
What did happen, by the way?
He's not stopping. He was jumping on the trampoline and just landed on
fucking
Magnus's
trampoline.
Foot, and it was just like a weird angle
Enough
or
said,
something.
Dude. I knocked my teeth out when I was a kid on a trampoline. Those things will get you. Damn, it was a tramp.
Well, yeah, it was super fluke accident, and I'm like, I jumped on plenty of trampolines when I was a kid. I never broke any bones, and nowadays they have the big net that comes out around it.
A lot of good that did.
It's you'd think it's pretty safe,
It's an illusion.
But yeah, it was just a fluke thing, and I hit him with the dad, walk it off, bud,
Oh no, and he took a step and was like.
Well, no, he was crying, and my wife was like, "No, dude, we gotta go to the hospital. Something's wrong." I was like, "All right, fair enough." But that's just the dad instinct of you'll be fine. Rub some dirt on it,
I thought you stood him up and smacked him on the butt. He's like, "Ah, no!" Yeah, bone just pops out. It's like, "Oh shit, okay, my bad, sonny boy."
He broke his tibia and fibula, which apparently is a pretty common fracture in toddlers. But yeah, so what were we talking about? Simulation theory?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you with all that.
No, it's all good. Okay, so with how good the graphics are right now, what is it gonna look? What's our virtual reality going to look like in 100 years? Continuing on the pace that we're going.
Well, like I said,
what do you think?
Maybe we'll just make one of these. That's maybe the next step. Just a full, you just enter into it. So This
Like
is my
Roy
greatest
from
reference.
Rick
I
and
really,
Morty.
I really think even better example, dude. I think they nailed it in the '80s. Schwarzenegger, Total Recall. That movie explains reality,
yeah,
dude.
yeah, yeah.
Because and what I love about it, what is the trippiest part about that movie is not that it's a simulation or anything, but you know he the premise, if you forget, he goes on a mental vacation and they put him in this booth where he believes so much that he's on vacation he actually forgets. And this is the important part. He forgets that he entered the simulation. And so that's key. Okay, because I think that's what makes our
that's what
simulation
makes
real.
it fun.
Yeah, and that's what this whole death thing is. It's kind of a joke. I think it's just you forgot, you know. So anyway, so the best part of that movie is, you know, the apex when they bring out his doppelganger to convince him that he's in fact in a simulation, and he's so convinced by his own delusion of it that he shoots himself in the head and runs off, you know, his doppelganger. He just blast Arnold too, like, fuck you, I'm not no simulation, man, you know. But he actually is. And then when he, you know, at the end when he comes out after the whole ordeal and it's like that moment of like, oh my God, like he was so invested. I mean, he was fucking killing fools, running from gangster, you know, the whole nine, and because he believed it was real. You know?
For sure.
And it's the same thing.
Like in how many years are we going to have
but so that's
a
my
virtual
point
reality
is,
that's just like this?
right,
100
and that's
years?
what I was trying
1,000?
to tie it to is maybe we willfully entered into this simulation and the whole gimmick is you have to forget it. And that's what I mean. Maybe we already did create this virtual reality you're describing and it's so good.
Well, not, you know what
maybe
I mean? Not us, but like
no, maybe
so,
literally
right.
us. Like I said, you might wake up in some futuristic Mars world laughing as you get out of the tube after this. I'm just saying.
Right.
I mean, you know,
like Roy from
Rick and
this
Morty, might already,
play
in
the
fact,
Roy game.
be the apex of the technology you're describing, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. So,
but within it, we try to make it again, and when we succeed, we just wake up to the fact we've already done it. Yeah.
Well, so right. So if we are going to be at that point of creating a reality in whatever, let's just say 1,000 years for
sure.
giggles.
Yeah.
Our universe is what, 13 billion years old, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
So they say.
What are the odds that there's already been some alien species that achieved our level of technological achievement, or 1,000 years past that, and was able to create a simulation of a universe, right? So you have your prime reality, the first one that ever existed. Odds are, that a civilization created a simulated universe out of that prime reality, right?
Well, where did prime reality come from, bud?
Well, that's a separate question, but we're just doing a math exercise, right?
Sorry.
So prime reality creates a simulation. Odds are that simulation created a simulation, and then that simulation created a simulation, right?
And we're trying to do it again right now. We're trying to figure it out, and we're only like...
And you take all of those with the one prime reality with all the simulations all the way down, right? Throw it all onto a dartboard, right? Take a dart and throw it at the dartboard. What are the odds that you hit the prime reality?
Well,
infinitesimal. Just it's like.
But the thing is, if they all spawn from it, then they all technically are it. It's like a spider weaving a web. It's all part of the same structure.
Right.
If the prime reality
think about it
made all of the successive realities, it's a connective thread.
Yeah.
It's like the whole pebble in a pond thing, man. It does ripple out across. Or I actually just rewatched the I Heart Huckabees. You remember that movie with Dustin Hoffman and Jason Schwartz. Anyway, Dustin Hoffman's like an existentialist. He's an existentialist detective, and his basic explanation of Schwartzman of like the whole universe. Dustin Hoffman just like holds up a blanket. He's like, "See this? The blanket. It's the whole everything. Everything is the blanket. You, me, everything in between is this blanket." And then he puts his fist on one side. He's like, "There's you. There's me." And it's all blanket. And then it's like through the whole movie there. They keep going back to that. He's like, remember the blanket. Remember the blanket. It's like, we're all just blanket, But but it pops up all of these different realities from the same fabric that is the one blanket, But somehow it spawns each of these like, nodes, but it's still the same. It's all blanket, man.
It's all one thing at the end of the day. And sometimes, that simulation theory thing, I'll tell that to people and they get like sad about it. And I'm like, what does it matter?
I think it's a lot less morbid than just death. You go to some hell where people poke you with things, or you go to some boring ass cloud with weird angels and diapers. Like I don't know. Like, the other versions of reality are, I think, even more twisted if you think about it. Like heaven and hell, that shit's fucking weird. You know what I mean? When you really think about it, like you really believe that that's one of those two options is actually waiting for you. Like
Oh, I know. That's
seems
sad.
very sad. It's like, that sucks.
And it's kind of like
And very limiting, very limiting. Two
it's like the
factors out
thinking
of
of it's the thinking of like a toddler of like, if you're good,
Yeah.
you get to be in heaven forever. And if you're bad, you get punished forever.
Well, and the
you know?
descriptions of them are vague. It's like heaven is good things, but what exactly are those things? And it seems like the
Wouldn't
things.
it get boring?
That's what I'm saying. The things they paint is
Like
like good,
100
like
billion
hanging
million
out,
years
eating grapes, and
of getting whatever you want.
banging virgins.
After a while, it would turn into hell.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's
you'd
what
be
I'm saying.
well,
Like,
need,
yeah,
you
I
know,
want something unique
fuck.
because novelty, I think, is honestly, that's kind of another pivot to this. Is I think the novelty factor is what drives. I think all like the cosmos and its replicatingness. I think, frankly, from Prime universe up to this universe, it's all about novelty, dude. Everything just seeks to have a unique, interaction. And, to say that, I'm a firm believer that everything everyone's doing is a one-off. Like every conversation, every word, because the juxtaposition of everything on the planet in the moment is always different. And so I always think about it like if the planet was pumping out a Polaroid of every instant, there would never be two Polaroids the same. You know what I mean? You can never reconfigure everyone and every being and everything back in the same position twice. Everything's always constantly in some different frame of reality. So I think every frame of reality is unique.
Okay.
Every single frame, right? Like even if it's similar, it's not the same, right? Like every chess game, or every conversation, like this podcast, it's similar, sure, than the last one, but it's not the exact fucking same. And so
that's kind of one of the leading theories. So there's these leading theories of consciousness. One of them is called the global workspace theory, which was who thought of it? I think his name is Barr, but
Barr.
Yeah, something Barr. I think his name
Who
was.
Who walked into a bar?
Yeah, this philosopher.
Barr walked into a bar.
Scientist guy or whatever. But essentially, it's somewhat of a materialistic approach and saying that, consciousness comes from neurons, and it emerges because we evolved to have memory and attention, right? So like we were talking about with the 40 billion bits of unconscious data and then a limited amount of conscious data, that's just a result of evolution, right? So at some point we evolved attention to like make choices and focus on different things, and then I guess he thinks that we evolved to have memory, which I kind of makes sense. Like if you had a predator and it's going after its prey and the prey goes behind a rock, right? The predator, if it had that theory of mind of like, hey, that prey is still back there because I remember, right? It's still there. I know that it's still there. I can go around the rock and go catch it, So perhaps something like that is how we evolved to have memory. And then just the coupling of these neurological interactions leads to an emergence of consciousness. And it's all just evolutionary, it's all biological. And so I kind of like that. It makes sense.
Well, right. And I think, this is where I get into it too, is it's never, I don't think, whatever, the more on high woo-woo views necessarily counteract those points of view. I think they, at some point, the hard facts view run off a cliff, and that there's something, where does Prime Universe come from? There's always like a moment of like, even with, the logical, worldly views of these things, because that biological thing makes sense, but then you break down like what initiated that, and
okay, that's a really good point. So
you know what I mean, and it doesn't have an accumulative goal. Is this just running wildly into the future, or is it gonna, like Terrence McKenna talked about, like the eschaton, where there's gonna be this singularity that where all of the experience within this blue dot of Earth will have occurred, and then it will whatever happens with the singularity we'll only know then. Basically it's one of those things. It's an unknowable moment. It can only be experienced, is the point of what an eschaton is. But his point is it will be the moment.
What a cool word.
Yeah, well, there's a whole you probably get a kick out of looking it up. It's called eschatology, and there's a whole philosophy around it, but it is the idea that we're running up to a singularity. And his biggest theory or his biggest proof to that theory was the extrapolating, time frames of how the densification of like, evolution is stepping up in shorter and shorter time spans, like how indigenous people lived in this area for 10,000 years. And then in the last 250 years, since Europeans have shown up, we've gone from, long houses and fishing and all that as a way of life to the big city all in 200 years. Whereas before that, there was 10,000 years of one way of life, So
yeah, people did things the same way for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we are experiencing this very beginning of this exponential curve. Like the difference between our lives and our parents, the boomers, their lives, pretty different, right?
Right.
But the difference between what our parents, the boomers, experienced and how they lived their life compared to their parents and compared to, so our grandparents,
right, was more similar.
Great grandparents, not that much different, right?
Yeah, and you think back to like the 1800s, people took over the family. You did what your father did. The business stayed within the family. People were more or less the same for generations. And now it's like every generation is something different coming out now. It's like,
I guess it would have been pretty wild. You hear about these people that were born in the late 1800s that saw like the invention of the car, the train.
My great grandma did.
When they were older, they saw the plane, and then like
TV.
TV and the moon landing and shit like that. And it's like, all right, that's pretty wild for that to all happen in one lifetime.
A lifetime.
But like, the main thing is our perspective, the way we live our life, and the amount of knowledge that we have just at our fingertips compared to our parents. It's astronomical, dude.
Yeah.
What are our kids going to experience? Is their perspective and their life going to be way different from ours? Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of what I hear in these big tech companies, they're talking about, data creation and how much it's being created right now. And like, I heard at a Microsoft meeting that the rate at which they're building data centers, data farms, it's like tripling every 3 months. Like how many they're needing to build, the amount of it is it's self-extrapolating by 3 times each time, if that makes sense. So it's getting more and more and more and more necessary to build these things. And it's like, where's that going to end? And then now they're saying, the amount of data, we acquire in just a matter of days is like the amount of data that used to take, thousands of years for human society to come up with. Now it's happening just daily. I mean, in terms of like the amount of information that's being shared across the globe, it's crazy.
So I do agree with you that there could be like a singularity coming, and a lot of people think that maybe that's like us combining with machines.
Well, and I guess
AI.
Like I think about it maybe in like an overtly simple way of, maybe the whole point again of the universe is novelty, and so therefore every world, i.e. an Earth, a planet, a sphere, it runs its program until it gets the max amount of experience. Let's just call it that. And so it uses all the different beings and ages and different interactions. And once it's fulfilled its amount, X number of interactions between plant, animal, bug, fungi, all the elements in the program, right? Because they are finite. That's the part of it that is finite. But then the dynamics between all those things, I think, is where you get into the infinite. But I think maybe pre-programmed into these worlds is a apex to where it's like, all right, ding, it's like, program has reached its max experience.
You've had
time.
enough.
Well, yeah, and the program either, like time. Pokemon evolves and goes onward, or just something happens. But I think basically, like I said, in very simple terms, the real goal of the cosmos is just to acquire that experience, just like data. Most of it just sits there in the hard drives of the world, but I think the cosmos is kind of doing the same thing. It's this big data collecting hard drive that uses beings and species and interactions between them to just collect information about experiences for what the fuck ever reason. And I think
what is so you were
I don't think there is any. I think we attach that to it. I think
we attach the meaning to it?
That's what I've always thought about, that as like literally we're meaning machines like to the world. We are the thing that puts that blanket of meaning on top of shit, thoughts and feelings and judgments and all of that. The world doesn't care. I think it wants all the experiences, good, bad, ugly, joyful, gruesome, all of it. Because my point is it all does in fact exist. So that's where I go with it. But again, back to the hyper literal, it's all occurring. So therefore the universe as we know it isn't choosy. It's fine allowing extremely harsh things like war to play out and beautiful, amazing things like Romeo and Juliet, you know what I mean, and arts and all the shit in between. So
And it's up to us being the like shepherds of the reality to create. I would argue that there's
to experience
powerful
and then
people
to
that are nudging it in certain
yeah,
directions.
for
But
sure.
like, yeah, we do. We kind of
But think about on the
do
cosmic
create
level, there is
we
no
set
such
the
thing as
table,
powerful people. If you're watching the drama, they're all equal to you. Like if you're watching Game of Thrones, sure, you have your favorite characters and stuff, but none of them really substantially are affecting you, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? If you were thinking about the universe watching
I don't know
itself,
if I agree with that.
no, I mean in like a literal reality. It's a show. It's like it's not. You're in a room. It's not affecting you. You're watching these people behave, and you're making judgments on the characters and things. But I'm saying ultimately, you're letting it all play out. You know what I mean? You're
Okay.
passive observer. But I'm saying I think there's some part of the universe that is passively observing its whole self for the sake of seeing it all. If that makes sense. Like it wants it all to play out.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's the person,
Yeah.
you in the room watching it on a screen. But I think, the prime reality in some way is observing all of the successive, sub-realities.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the Kali Yuga, right?
Yeah.
That
And if there's a
old-
reason why, I don't know. Maybe it's just like, femputer and fembots world. Futurama.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
It's just-
E-girls?
It's all just a femputer,
So you were talking about data, right?
Yeah.
So the other leading theory of consciousness is called integrated information theory. And this was coined by Giuliano Tononi. Pretty sure I said that right.
Giuliano.
He's a professor in
Giuliano. Giuliano.
So I like integrated information theory. So
Yeah.
it comes from a standpoint of phenomenology. Remember at the beginning of the episode we were talking about like materialism versus phenomenology. So he says consciousness is the prime thing, and he tries to quantify it from that perspective, right? So essentially what it is, he has these 5 axioms of how you would describe a conscious experience, and then he tries to put like a mathematical weight kind of to it, and it's pretty high level math, but it's the essential explanation is like, let's say you have a bunch of logic gates, like a circuit board, and each logic gate's going to give you a little bit of information, right? So on its own, each one, it's like, all right, big deal, right? But if you zoom out and it's, like a circuit board, it integrates all that information and becomes something greater than the sum of its parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that integrating of information is where consciousness arises, right? I kind of agree with that one too. I think that's a pretty good approach. But, there are some weird aspects to it. I mean, by that definition, then like there's a lot of things that are conscious, like a
Well, let me
computer
ask
would
you this.
be-
So is he
would be
saying,
conscious.
yeah, was he saying information creates consciousness or consciousness creates information? Or right?
I think it's more of, because he is from a standpoint of phenomenology, so I think he would probably say the latter, but
It's
it's
chicken or
it's
the
more
egg.
of like he's just trying to describe consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like a materialistic approach, but really it's not. When you hear him talk about it, he's full on board with the phenomenology.
Yeah, I did.
But-
I definitely feel. I've always been hip on prerequisites. It's one part of math that I felt like I liked and understood. But, I feel like every instant of reality is a prerequisite of, the moments before it. And so, where's the prime consciousness that generated? Because then you get into what is defined as information. Is information just the word I was using, experience? Is it an occurrence between two things?
In this case, it would be like neurons firing.
Okay.
Like the neurons would be the logic gates of the circuit board.
Right. Right.
Input of your senses and
It's really interesting
Yeah.
that you put it that way too, because semi-relevant. But when I was flying into Arizona a couple weeks ago, and I was looking, and it was at night. All the lit up cities. I remember I was just thinking, it was like it really looked like circuitry. Like the way the lights were, and everything was like squared, and it was in like symmetrical patterns, and the lights. I was like, whoa, like up above, like the human night or from night.
I love that.
It looks like a big circuit board, and I was thinking about that. Like we're kind of
Could
becoming
a
that
city
for the
have
planet.
consciousness?
That's what I'm saying.
Like, if
and is
you're using
the world like building
this-
these circuit boards on it, and we're like the upgrade to the planet? You know, like adding new RAM to a computer. Is
Yeah.
a city just that for the world? Like
We're an individual logic gate. Like if he's, it's like you ever see a flock of birds?
no, yes, I just saw one
You know
actually
how it
yesterday.
moves?
A bunch of geese. They were honking at
Like
me.
they're all individuals, right?
Yeah.
But when you see a flock of birds,
the flying
moving, and
V.
they're all moving together.
The V, man. You ever seen the Mighty
It's
Ducks?
like it. Well, no, like the swarms of birds. You know, where it looks like a blob
chaos.
moving
Yeah,
around,
or like a
you know?
school of fish. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, so they're each one is an individual consciousness, but when they act together like that, you integrate the information. You know, does that swarm of birds then kind of, you know, is that where the consciousness emerges? You know?
Yeah. And you feel that with humans. I
think
mean,
that's
we
pretty
definitely
cool.
all have our mass ways of things, you know, when we do things in herd mentality. I mean, that's definitely out there in humanity. And then, yeah, you can have the rogues in the forest, monks on the mountain, people who separate from that. But I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I never really limit it to being one or the other. I think that's really the nuance to life. It's all things and everything in between. You know what I mean? There's a lot of factors to everything. So many.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, there was one guy that I filmed in my time at Microsoft that he was the only person that he said it, like the word, and it just like made me like, fuck yeah, this guy gets it. I figured he took psychedelics or something. But he had this whole elaborate speech on basically chaos theory of predictability behind the turn of a card, and why no human ever in history has the turn of a card, playing card.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why nobody in human history has been able to perfectly predict that 100% every time. You know, there's people that are good at it, people can read it, but he said there's never been a person that can accurately 100%, no matter what, predict the turn of a card, because the factors behind every turn of a card are infinite. And that's where he like paused and was like, you need to understand that behind every turn of every card, there's an infinite amount of factors. And the human mind, can only retain those 40 or whatever in the room to make them think they got a good guess on what it's going to be. But the reality of all the things that are squaring up to make that card turn into what it is, it's so detailed, it's insane. But our minds whittle it out and think it's just, just a simple turn of a card. It's no big deal. It's just how the guy shuffled
Have you ever
it.
predicted it? You ever tested your ESP?
No. There's an app
No.
for ESP. You should get it. The Russell Targ
Is there
guy.
really?
Yeah, he started
Of
an
course there is.
ESP app. It's pretty cool. Dude, there was one guy on the poker series, I think it was like last year, and it was spooky. He predicted the whole thing. And it was like totally on the cuff. First, he predicted the flop perfectly, and everyone was like tripping out. And it was
It
like,
happens,
and what
man.
was crazy is he did it like as it was like 3 seconds before it came out. He's like, oh, it's gonna be two spades, and he like got it like numbers and suits, right? Okay.
What are the odds
And
of
then
that?
the turn came, and they were all like joking, you know, what's the turn gonna be? What's the turn gonna be? And he's like, you know, like six of fucking clubs, and poof, everyone's like,
And it was?
it was. He got the turn.
too?
Well, to get this was
Oh,
this was
wow.
crazy, and I remember I'll never forget the two of hearts for this reason. Everyone's like tripping out, you know. And the guy was just kind of quiet, he's just sitting there. He's like, oh, yeah, whatever. And then they're like, oh man, someone was like, if he gets the river, I'm fucking out of here. And then no one even asked him to predict it, but he's kind of casually, he's like, oh, it's two hearts, dude. Two hearts came down, and people fucking flipped. They like one dude just like threw his hat down and left. He was like, I'm out of here.
That's so funny.
This is weird. And the one dude who made the prediction didn't even really read. He just kind of sat there shrugging. He's like, oh, he's like, I just knew.
Dude, that's, the
Dude,
odds of that
he
are
got the whole
13.
hand. He got the whole hand, dude. It was wild. When he said two hearts, and then the one guy was like, if it's two hearts, I'm out of here. And it fucking hit the table. He's just like, fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, the odds of him doing that are 13 to the -8.
It's pretty insane. And how nonchalant he was. He wasn't even brave. He was just like this kind of schlubby, overweight dude. He was like, oh, I don't even know. He's like, I just saw it.
Did anybody ask him if he can do that?
No, he couldn't. He didn't
frequently?
repeat it. He just said in that moment he just had that.
Yeah,
You know,
he just tapped into
he just something.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I think ESP is real.
He hit
There's
the zone.
Project Stargate.
Oh yeah,
He's a
Russell
real-
Targ. Like I said, I got a bunch of his books on ESP. He's got a really good TED Talk. He's the guy that loosely based off of the Minu Derek Goats movie
Yeah,
but Russell
him
Targ,
and Joe McGonigal, I think.
yeah, they started a lot of those governmental programs. And it's funny in Russell Targ in his TED talk, he's like, it wasn't until the '80s that the government de-invented, ESP. He's like, they've known about it for, a long, long time. But he's like, in the '80s, it kind of the programs got out of control, and they had to like de-invent the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one guy who was really supposedly he was like the best ever. It was Ingo Swann, I think his name was. And they were using him to like spy on the Kremlin remotely.
Yeah, and they've solved crime. Russell Targ was saying they've got documented crimes they've solved this way. Many of them they found bodies.
McGonigal solves a bunch,
they found murder weapons, cars, bodies this way from remote viewing. People accurately remote viewed compounds, in other parts of the country, and then they go and verify it. And there's something to it.
Do you think that if we just assume that that's all true? I believe that it's true.
Yeah, why?
Right?
I mean, I don't see what his reason to lie is. I mean, he's an old man.
Do you think that that's evidence against a materialistic approach to consciousness?
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they exclude each other. I think it's both. I think that's where people get too hung up on that whole. Yeah, it's one thing or the other. I think literally, I'm saying it all exists, baby. Everything in between.
You need both.
Yeah,
you got the matter and the spirit. And they combine.
And even those two concepts are vague. Like there's so many more concepts between those two concepts that really explain reality. That are, in fact, most of reality I would say is non-transferable to words. It's just experiential. There's all of that
Correct.
too.
We are very limited.
Yeah, we can't even debate it.
Language.
It's just literally something you'll like. I've had so many moments like alone hiking and beautiful thing, and that's the beauty part. It'll never be shared with anyone, and you know that about it. You're like, fuck, this is just me and my interaction with the and like you're saying at the beginning of this. How do you verify that against anything else? You can't. It's just your soul perspective. And everyone gets that
reality.
Yeah, everyone gets that though. That's the cool part.
So here's what I think. I think that our consciousness, ourselves, our soul, whatever you want to call it, I think it exists in another dimension as like a primordial thing, right? And our matter in our brains, because clearly you need a brain to have consciousness. Like if I smacked you over the head with a pipe, you're going to go unconscious,
But
it's gonna pause
a lot of times, though, you turn up somewhere else in those experience near death or whatever. You still have.
Okay, well, that's we can talk about near death in a minute, but like, what I'm just saying is like you need a brain to be conscious, or at least we do. We were talking about plant intelligence last time. They don't have brains, and I think that we showed that they are conscious. But
they talk to me.
I think that our brains are an antenna essentially that receive our soul, our consciousness, and allow us to interact in this realm, this reality of matter, and
And I think our brains are kind of like a Play-Doh factory. It takes our soul and it like squeezes it through the Play-Doh thing, so it comes out like a star or a circle, something condensed and specific. Because the soul is a big and it's a lot of options. Like you're saying, think about this, and I've been meaning to bring this up when you're saying, the brain processes 80 billion bits of information a second. Think about that. What is a bit of information, and where the fuck is 80 billion bits coming into one brain a second from? Like, what is all that? Is that just static white noise? You know what I'm saying? When you really break down the detail,
is everything.
But each bit of information, my point is derived from something, and it is a thing. That's why I love sound. I got into sound engineering because a sound represents a source. It takes something to create a sound, right? Much like a little bit of information, just like a grain of sand. At one time, it was a cliff. But to get to be a tiny grain of sand, it had to go through thousands of years of fucking erosion and water hitting it and wind and shit. And suddenly it's a beach of sand, right? But it's like all those details in your brain. Think about what you're saying when you're saying it processes 80,000 bits of information. What exactly are those fucking bits of information? There's something. But I guess my point is I think that's all of the static that your soul is retaining in terms of all the experience you've had on your infinite series of scales of lifetimes. I mean, I think not only is the cosmos infinite, but since we're in it, ourselves are included in that, right? And so I think what you're really packing is an infinite amount of experience, but you don't need it all. You just need a little bit of it to get through planet Earth. So again, your soul squeezes that shit down, and it makes you human, and you forget 80 billion bits of that an instant just to have the 40 bits,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the
It's like,
favor.
let's
and like
slow it down.
And like we were saying,
One thing at a
I've had
time.
this epiphany many times. What you forget affects you just as much as what you remember.
Oh yeah,
Just as much.
Your brain
so
is still
all
going
that stuff
through
you're
all that
forgetting about the stuff
information.
you've done is making this life making Jordan and Daniel because of all the shit we're forgetting. Not necessarily the stuff we're remembering, but the stuff we're forgetting is making up who we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The unconscious is super fascinating,
Yeah.
dude. So
it's like this filtering
back in
gate
the,
of letting shit in, you know. Sometimes memories are in, sometimes they're out. And I think things like psychedelics, dreaming, near death, all that breaks that down temporarily. And then you come back.
it changes the antenna.
Yeah, right.
You
Until
know,
the Play-Doh
dials your,
factory gets it back.
You know, we were talking about where the thoughts come from, you know, stoner conversations or whatever. I think that those substances just tune your antenna just a little bit differently. And I think of like thoughts, you know, I think thoughts are external. You know, you are not your thoughts, right? You can influence which thoughts come to you. I think of it like a river.
But if you
right?
have the thoughts, then you are your thoughts.
Well, see, because there's people that have like mental disorders, you know, and they can't stop the bad thoughts, right? And it's like, well, you're not broken, you know, it's just that your antenna's a little off, you know? And so I think of it like the thoughts are a river and we are fishermen.
I
And
like that.
you're a fisherman and you catch a thought, you know, and you pull it up. And
Ideally.
you can change your fishing rod, you can change your lure, you know?
But sometimes that river washes over you.
Yeah,
and
you have
you off the
ton
rock.
of thoughts coming, you know, and sometimes you meditate and you put your pole down and you stop fishing for a while, right?
You groove on what you got.
Sometimes you eat a heroic dose of mushrooms and instead of a fishing pole, you get like you're like dynamite fishing or something. It changes like, you know, your
Reach in the water.
Or you take DMT and you fucking go to a totally different river, you know. You're on a goddamn lake or something, you know.
Turns out you're just at the
Deep sea
mall.
fishing.
You're just
you're
in the penny fountain at the mall.
Yeah, you're in
Little
like
kids.
one of those
Mommy,
Dr. Seuss rivers. It's like a rainbow and, you know,
there's some
whatever.
stinky hippie in the fountain again. The river of life.
So you were talking about the unconscious and how it can still perceive things. So back in I think it was the late 80s.
Not even so much
they were
like
doing...
perceive things. That it is a thing. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's making noise, like something emitted a sound. That's what I'm saying. It's generating something. It's like there's a hum. Yeah. And whether it's perceived, I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I may cut you off, but I don't know. My point is it's there, and I don't know what to call it, but it has a presence, right? Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about it? So back in the late 80s or early 90s, I think they were working on patients with epilepsy, and one of the methods was to sever your left and right hemisphere of your brain, right? So that they couldn't interact anymore. Right?
Oh, that's smart.
Well, I mean, if you had really bad epilepsy, it might be a good thing, right? But what they found, the effects of this, right, with these severed hemisphere patients is, I believe it's either the right side or the left side that can that you use for language. And they noticed that if they blocked one side, you know, they could ask each side questions, right? And one side could talk, you know, and the other side couldn't, but it could still kind of communicate, right?
Weird.
And yeah, then with one guy, they asked him, like, do you believe in God? And the right hemisphere was like, oh, yeah, absolutely, you know? And then the other hemisphere answered no, you know? And they would flash like a word, right, on one side. And then they'd have the other side reach into a box and like grab the object that was flashed, or the word, right? It'd say like tennis ball. And he'd reach in and grab the tennis ball. And they'd be like, well, why did you grab that? And he'd be like, I don't know. I just like tennis, you know? Like he didn't know that the word was flashed to the other hemisphere, you know?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Like it was almost like each hemisphere had its own personality when it was severed, you know?
Huh. Well,
Remind me of have you seen that show Severance on Apple TV?
Is that literally what it's about?
Kind of. They get these chips
It's
inserted in their brain that, like,
I've never heard
when
of
they go into work, and the chip activates, and it makes it so they can't remember anything that happened outside of work. And then when they go out of work, it, whatever, turns off, and they can't when they're outside of work, they can't remember what happened inside of work. So it essentially creates two people,
right? Your work self and your
Yeah, it's a really good show. You should watch it. But, like, it's just fascinating that, if you did that and you severed your memories like that, it would essentially create two different people.
That's what I mean. What you forget is very important. That's proven. That's right. That's based on that premise. Forgetting. Yeah, forgetting's powerful shit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So is remembering.
Yeah, you're just a kind of a product of your environment,
Yeah.
But nevertheless, so going back to the very beginning of what you said of at the end of the day, you can have all these materialistic views of how consciousness comes out of matter, but it's like Francis Crick said, that even if you have all these correlations, like I see this side of the brain lighting up when you're doing math, or this side of the brain lighting up when you're learning another language, that's all just correlation. It's not the causation. Like, at the end of the day, you still need to make a massive leap of faith to say that the matter created consciousness, Because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that we can prove that exists, It's the primal thing.
Well, then that whole concept of proving, it's funny. We're always trying to, like, pin something down like it's permanent, and that's, we've said this many times before. Yeah, the only constant is change. I mean, everything is constantly in flux, and so there's always this human pursuit of, like, proving something that is kind of, slippery to begin with. Everything has, I guess, details that can be added layer that change, what was proven before. And I think it's inevitable in all fields of life. There's going to be new details added down the road, and simply just that, new data, new details, new perspectives, new points of view on any subject are going to change it. That's one thing I liked about the, I don't know if you've read much about the tradition of Jainism, but, they're the only... Jainism? Yeah, they broke off of Hindu way at the beginning. They're right up there with Buddhism.
I've ever heard of that.
Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Anyway, they're the only... they're not technically a religion because they don't have any gods or goddesses, but they have an ever-evolving volume of basically spiritual wisdom that is consistently added to constantly by everyone who's a Jain or a Jain monk. They don't have, like...
I like that.
Yeah, they don't have one text like a Bible or a Quran or whatever that is like the holy word. They have a constantly evolving text that is, updating itself with the ages, because they're hip to that. And their whole, faith is based on karma. And they've actually, like, narrowed it down that, like, there's 8.5 million potential karmatic states to incarnate into from... they label it by your senses. So, like, a rock is an incarnated state, and then if you evolve from that, you can become like a bug, and you have a few more senses. Animals have a few more senses, and humans have the most sensory intake, so therefore they have the most karmatic dissipation and accusation. And so, in a Jain's perspective, all of existence is either dissipating karma or acquiring more of it. And so they're hypersentient on all of their actions, and basically everything they do, they see it's that simple. You're either taking on more karmas by your interactions with other karmatic beings, or you're consciously dissipating them through, things like simpleness and gratitude and that, that hogwash.
I totally agree with that. I think that karma is a real thing, and I think that it's probably a actual substance in some other reality.
Well, that's how they treat. That's how Jains treat it.
I think thoughts are a thing in another dimension. I think karma is too, and you accrue it, and you can get rid of it. And
so Jains actually have these really cool words, and I wish I actually knew the words, but the first word basically describes everyone in the state of ignorance, to where basically you're operating in the world unaware that you're generating karmas. Right, and that's the first operative state in Jain's mind. And then in the next state is like realization of the fact that, yes, you are in fact living in a karmatic, infinite world. And what's interesting about Jainism, they're one of the first, they're ancient, okay? They're an ancient tradition, and they've been there since the beginning. And it's Jain if you want to look them up. They're actually the first tradition to use the swastika not tilted or whatever. That's where Hitler stole it from, the powerful symbol.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the next state, successive state, is basically being able to not only be aware of your karmas, but then to consciously interact with them in a way where you can dissipate them and, move them consciously, right? And then they're basically their final resting place that they call it is like an omnipresence, to where you're totally aware of all the factors of your karmatic existence. So therefore you can kind of masterfully move about the world without, fucking shit up, right?
They could probably see it, if you were so in tune to that, you could probably like feel it and see it.
Yeah. And so like, very traditional, like famous Jain practices, they will like sweep in front of them when they walk so they don't crush bugs. They wear a mask. Right. Even the most devout old Jain monks, they won't wear clothes because it's a form of shame. Yeah. Some of them, they won't chop, they won't chop vegetables because that's a form of violence. I mean, it gets real nitty gritty with Jains.
That's tough. I mean, you gotta eat something.
Oh, no, right? Yeah, some of them are so devout that they will only accept food that's been given to them. Yeah. Yikes. So here's an interesting.
That's a roll of the dice.
So, and I'll leave it. I'll leave it at this. This is a good way to kind of sum the whole thing up with them, and I like this. This is a beautiful way to look at karma, right? So a lot of their, and you should Google just like Jain art. A lot of their concepts are simple and summed up in art. And one of their best art pieces, it's this big, huge tree, apple tree, right? And it's to describe that basically in Jainism, there is no judgment on a karmatic path. It's kind of like we were talking about earlier, that the universe is open to observing everything. And Jains take that seriously. There is no ultimate judgment on what any being chooses in their karmatic path. There are just choices and there are outcomes, right?
I love that.
And so they use this example of this apple tree, and there's 5 Jains, and each Jain is wearing a different colored robe to represent the type of karma they're acquiring. So the first Jain is wearing a black robe, and it signifies like the most heavy karma, and he's chopping the tree down to get the apple. And then the next Jain is wearing like a yellow robe, and he's sawing off one of the branches to get the apple. And the next Jain is in like a red robe, and he's out on the edge trying to pick the apple off the tree. And then the final Jain, in the most pure karmatic state, is sitting at the base of the tree waiting for the apple to fall. And the example there is that every interaction, whether it's just getting an apple, generates a karma. And how you go about interacting with that apple is a choice. You can chop the tree down, you can chop the branch, you can pick it, you can wait for it, right? And the Jains are saying there's no judgment on what is chosen, but they do result in a different karmatic path. And if you can be aware of that all the way down to picking your fucking apples, that's what they're saying. Like every choice is substantial.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally believe in that.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what kind of karma is like, dudes like Epstein? What kind of karma?
And most people are bulls in a glass shop, man, just thrashing around this world unaware that they're garnishing all. Like here's the metaphor I came up with in my own head, and I thought about, you've met my brother Kit, and I told this to my brother. I was like, dude, every moment and your choice you make in your life with the shit you put in your body, your food, health, whatever, it's either one shovel pile of shit off your karmatic pile or shoveling more onto it. And most people get to the end of their life and they just have this giant pile of shit they've just shoveled onto themselves, and they go, oh my God, I didn't take any off. Because that's what things like acts of kindness and generosity and gratitude, that's what that does. That takes karma off your pile. But most people aren't aware.
Does it stay with you to the next life?
That's just exactly it. It stays with you until basically you
until you get rid of it.
Well, you neutralize it. You confront it, and you do the thing to flip it. Because every action you're doing is basically, so think about every moment you're existing as a grand total sum of all of your choices. So every single choice is nudging your total energy in some direction. Because in an infinite series of experiences, everyone is substantial. It's like all points are the center type theory.
Dude, I killed so many spiders this week. I feel bad.
Dude, those nudged you down a wormhole.
One of them was coming after Ivan, though, and I had to shmush it. Oh, man. And then another one was in the garage. It was weird. Like, I killed, 3 spiders this week. I think it's just that time of the year, It's
dude,
like
devout Jains are tisking you everywhere. They're going, where's your spider broom?
Okay, but I found a praying mantis in my garage, and I saved it and put it out in the garden.
I was gonna say, that I have a little Tupperware, and when I see spiders and shit in the house, I just scoop them up and take them outside. For real. That's why I was telling you about the squirrels, man. I could not drown them in the bucket. I took them to this tree.
Yeah. All right. If they were rats, though, would you have saved them, or would you have killed them?
I don't even know. We had a rat when we first moved in, and they put a trap in, and the trap killed them. So I didn't stop it, but I wasn't the one that killed it. Joe hired the exterminator, my landlord.
Yeah, it's funny how like if it's a rat, we're like, oh, you gotta kill it, but like a squirrel, like if you killed a squirrel, I'd be like, dude, you're canceled. Like,
dude, well, like I said, my little grandmother killed hundreds of those things, man. She's from Winchester, Idaho, and that's how they got down out there. If something was fucking with your crops, Uh-oh, we lose you.
Like learn something too if they want to look into it deeper. They can be like, oh, I want to learn about integrated information theory. I'm gonna go look that up, or
maybe they will.
Global fucking what was it called? Global workspace theory. That's a bad name, dude. That's a shit name for a theory. Like global workspace. What the fuck, dude?
No, that's not very inviting. You're right.
All your neurons are in like a workspace. They're like in cubicles or something. Gross.
Yeah, we gotta apologize. We're back after my internet crashed. We left off on squirrels, something about squirrels, and
do you think
we're leaving that behind for now? But we're back.
Do you think squirrels are conscious?
I mean, they have to be. They're making choices to rip up my yard.
Yeah, they're definitely conscious, dude.
That's
one of the things I saw when I was like doing these deep dives is like there's a lot of hardcore materialist scientists that are like humans are the only ones conscious. Yeah, I was like, what? They're always very
evolutionary
ego. Very staunch atheists and like hardcore biology. Oh, Darwin did this and blah blah blah, and it's like you're just as bad as the religious zealots, just in the other way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
absolutely
like what Voltaire said. Let me pull up that quote because it's a really good quote. Doubt is an uncomfortable condition, but certainty is a ridiculous one. And it's like if you can never be that certain about things. You don't think there's anything that humans don't know right now, and a lot of these scientists, that's how they feel.
Yeah, they convince themselves of that. They have to. I mean, it keeps their
pride,
what they do day to day intact. In a lot of ways, they have to.
It justifies like the 20 years that they spent, at university, and it's like, oh, we know everything, well, it's just a matter of time before we figure out how the brain creates consciousness. A lot of them say that. That's weird.
Well,
they don't think there's anything more to it.
Right, totally. No, and that also reminds me, actually. So I don't know if you ever met my friend Russell, Joe's friend Russell. Did you ever meet that guy? Yeah, you met Russell.
I don't know.
We
Maybe
did Russell. He was that homie the first time we did Blow. Remember? That came over. It's like, this is way back. This is already a long time ago. But remember Russell? He drove us. I was a little jesty. You don't remember that whole night?
Was he the DJ?
No,
was he a DJ?
He was a DJ. He was a little pizza delivery guy. You met him a couple times. But that first night we got down and he came over. He was the one that gave it to us. How do you forget that? The night with the Ahmeds. I
had a lot of concussions back in the day, man.
That's true.
It disrupted my consciousness.
This is true. Where was I going with Russell?
Fucked up my neurons.
Yeah, right.
Wait, what about him, though?
So his brother, believe it or not, I know that was a weird way to introduce us, but his brother is like an astrophysicist, like straight up.
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, like degreed and whatever, very staunch astrobiology, whatever. He, looking into the nebulon of stars and telling me what's in there and shit. Anyway, he would come over and kick. He actually smoked weed. He was cool. Mike was his name. Good guy. And he'd come over, and we would always get in philosophical debates. And I remember I laid that what you just said on him. Like, okay, I'm like, yeah, your field is great. I know you've all looked at a lot of crap, and hopefully you're still open to the idea that like the ideas are going to change, and what you say now about what's going on in the middle of a star, this or that, is probably going to change at some point in human. And he's like, no. We know.
No, we know. We got it all.
We know. We know exactly what it is. We know what that gas is. We know how this happened. Nuclear fission and all this shit. And dude, he would not. And he actually got like pissed. He was like offended. He was like, "No, dude. Like we fucking know." And I was trying to tell him like, "No, man, dude. I'm like, you're not open to like some sort of like maybe somebody's off somewhere or something new's gonna come along or like what? How do we get to now, dude?" And he's just like, "No, we know. We know, dude." Yeah, and it became
I get it,
real
like,
sticking
right
point.
now. There's a lot of uneducated people that are very like have a lot of conviction
Well,
about
this guy
their
was
opinions.
highly
You know?
educated. That was what was weird. This guy was very educated.
No, but I'm saying like his anger or whatever is probably a result of like listening to like flat earthers and shit like that. You know,
Something,
Where
yeah.
It's like these fucking people. You know, like you don't know anything and you're just so confident. Like you know, no, we know this and we know that. You know, like.
Well, I remember
Yeah.
back in the day. Actually, you were the first person that said that to me. That I liked when you said it. That the scariest thing in life is when somebody truly believes they're right about something.
Yeah. It's the source of like all of mankind's troubles.
It
dude.
really
People
is.
just really think they're right about
Yeah.
something, you know,
Yeah.
like fucking Hitler and shit.
Yeah. When in essence, if anyone takes literally like half a step back from their day-to-day routine, life is utterly mysterious. It's not even like the
Yeah.
mysterious elements are
And
like
that's-
right there all the time. Like I'm just sitting and observing nature. You can be like mystified of like how the fuck is it? Like think about a mycelium there. What the fuck it's doing? You know, I don't know. Like the world is pretty
Yes.
awesome. And then there is that little tidbit that
100%.
like we all know that nobody's figured it out. If the answer was out there somewhere, we would have all heard something about it by now. You may not know what it is, but we would all know that like somebody's got it. You know, they'd be like, "Oh, what? That fucking city in like rural Uganda, they know the meaning of life. Like they figured it out." But you know what I mean? There's never been that like exclamation anywhere on planet Earth like, "Hey, we know of like one civilization that actually like cracked the code." Like it's up until
Yeah,
now, like you're
well, I
saying,
think
we're
that
all
there's-
off at least a little bit. We all hit that wall of like, well, I can't explain that part actually. You know, like
It's
every
the pyramids.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there was a previous civilization on the planet. You know, you look at the monolithic builders, it's like no, we have no idea how they built that shit. You know, they say it was just slave labor and logs
and
you know.
fancy ramps.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
got
and I'm like,
multi-ton.
I
They
don't
got
know about that, man.
multi-ton slabs of what stone, whatever fuck stone that was nowhere to be found. They were in a desert. Like, where did these
Yeah.
multi-ton,
Yeah.
perfectly square stones come from? Oh,
You want to do that for the next
these
episode?
dudes drug them with a rope, you know, from the
Yeah.
Mediterranean Sea. Duh, and then they chiseled
Yeah,
that,
duh.
and then they
There's nothing weird
wooden
here.
ramped it
you
up
know?
there, and somebody whipped them the whole way, so they worked extra
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
And then the civilization on the other end of the globe, you know, like the Mayans, just did the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, coincidental. It's a coinky dink.
I know, right?
You know. And in Machu Picchu, you know, like in Peru, they have a massive. Those ones are really impressive because
Yeah.
they're like really beautiful.
And those ones
Fit
you see
together
from
so
above,
well.
those images you can see from above of like the bird and shit. Those are spectacular.
Oh yeah,
they're
the
like
Nazca lines.
yeah, those
Yeah.
are like you know, thousands of acres in size. You know, they're not a small feat.
I know. Who is that for? You know?
Right? What's the motivation
you can't see
there?
it from the
Yeah.
ground level. So who are they building it for?
And one thing you can always assume about people, there's got to be some sort of motivation behind every act. You know what I mean? People are motivated to do what? Hunger. You got to pee. You got to fuck. You know, you got to kill something that's might harm you. To make a big giant monolith like that, that's thousands of acres in size, that can be seen from space, that looks like some
Wow.
you know, Aztec bird. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know the motivation, even if it isn't like out of this world. It's still interesting. Like, what maybe, and I've thought about this. You know,
Absolutely.
Well, maybe they got a lot of time on their hands. You know, maybe it's like I mean, like there's a lot of hours of film a day. And what did they have? They didn't have Nintendo. They didn't have Slurpee stands. They didn't have fucking roller rinks. They were like, let's just arrange these rocks.
Yeah, not that we know.
Right. I mean,
they had
maybe it was
something,
maybe it's a very mundane
you know?
answer of how that got there. We think it's something like you know, ancient aliens or whatever, but maybe it was just bored pre-civilization
Yeah.
people. They're like,
Well, maybe
what
they
are we doing today, Roy?
knew about
You want to
karma.
keep putting rocks in that bird pattern? Yeah. What else are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, eating squirrel.
Might as well.
Yeah, right.
Might as well do it. You know?
So
let's talk about that on our next
Yeah,
episode.
okay.
Let's talk about the ancient megalithic
ancient stuff
Yeah.
and where it may or may not have come from. That's a good.
Yeah.
We'll use that as the
That's a good
teaser.
topic,
That's,
right?
We'll say
Everybody
that's,
loves that.
that'll be my take, and we'll let Jordan's be the surprise. How is Jordan going to counter my thought on it being just a purely mundane, bored shithead out? Just like, you know, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start stacking stones because, well, you know, same thing with Stonehenge. Maybe they're just like, fuck it, man. Like, I'm sick of
Let's see how big of
sick
a rock we
fucking
can
laying
stack.
sick of laying in a cave. Let's do something.
Such a dude thing to
there's,
do.
There's rocks
Like-
over there. You want to stand them up and put them in a circle? It's gonna freak.
You guys
some
want to dig a hole?
Yeah, that's gonna freak some people out in 1,000 years. Like, maybe,
Hell yeah, dude.
maybe they're just like whatever. Anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
We'll
Consciousness. You got any closing thoughts?
Ooh, I'm living it, and it's great. Yeehaw,
Yeah.
consciousness.
I think we talked about everything. We talked about the major theories and monism versus dualism and materialism and all that. So
Yeah, no, I'm happy with how that went. Honestly, like I said, I think I was telling you before we started recording that I like your preparedness with that because I'm just kind of jiving into this here. I didn't really know.
it's a good episode.
Other than, I played that little
fun
clip of where we left off. It was kind of vague, like, where do thoughts come from? And I was thinking, I'll try to riff on that for an hour. Let's see, Good old tobacco and cannabis helped with that on my end. Jordan had his
I need to
notepad.
meditate more, man.
Yeah.
I wish I had the time to meditate, because I really feel like I could benefit from it.
Take the time, brother. Take that time for yourself. It's important.
It's tough with kids, man.
I know, but you came before those kids. You're the prime reality in the house, dude.
I made them, dude.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I helped.
Right.
I helped
so
make
you
them.
deserve a little meditation time out of the deal. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah,
dude.
I'm not complaining though. It's it's a gift.
It is. You don't ever think about taking them, just toss them in the river and giving it back to the universe. I'm over this.
No, what?
I want my life. I want my life back.
God, no. Jesus.
I meant in a basket. Like send them down the river. Like you know what I mean. Like send them off. Sorry, I know it sounded like drowning your kids. I meant more like
a Bible
back in the
or something?
yeah.
Who's the guy that?
Well, that's what they did back in the day.
Kill his kids.
They didn't like their babies.
Joe?
They just put them in a basket and send them to some other town. Somebody will find it and raise it.
Yeah. That sounds like a Bible story.
It is. I forget which one it was. Somebody went down a river in a basket. But I'm also pretty sure that's
Moses?
Denial. It's a river in Egypt. Yeah.
Yeah. But who's the guy that God told him to kill his son?
Oh,
is that Abraham?
That was Cain and Abel. Was that Cain?
No, Cain and Abel were
was that Job or something?
Sons of
No, they killed each
Adam
other.
and Eve.
That's right. They killed each other. Or
Cain killed Abel.
Right.
And then Cain's descendants were the Canaanites.
Ooh, that's a cool name.
They were a tribe.
Canaanites.
Yeah, the Canaanite. Yeah, whatever.
Canaanites.
That's a separate podcast.
Yeah, we're getting in the weeds now, but yes.
We are.
Okay, ancient.
We definitely are. Let's close this.
Monolithic structures and the origins of everything. Continued next time on the Yim Yam. It's been good chatting with you, my man.
Yim Yam, Jordan and Dan.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, buddy. Well, until next time, we out.
All right. Good night.
Peace.
Boom.